I think there's like a fear I have is a lot of people go through life feeling like they need more, and they'll never have enough, and that's something I never strive for. I feel very lucky to be alive every day. I think that just lightens the load, and you just naturally, kind of find the bounty in any moment. I don't know, I'm one of those weirdos when I see two people at the airport and they're hugging because they've just met each other. I'm just beaming with smiles for them, I just that's cool. There's so many micro moments in a day. It's, finding the joy in the little things.
Welcome to the Bountifull Podcast, where we explore what it means to live a bountiful life. Today, we're going to have a conversation that explores finance, choice, and having an impact. I'm delighted to be here in the actual studio, with the super talented and bubbly Brooke Roberts, co-founder of Sharesies, mum, wife, and a woman on a mission to change how people grow wealth and have the ability to live a more bountiful life by having choice and financial freedom. Brooke, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me in your own podcast studio. Welcome to the Sharesies world. So obviously it's a privilege to have this time with you here in Wellington and be at the Sharesies office. I wore this blazer especially for you. And for those of you watching and listening, we're obviously in Brooke's business in Wellington and surrounded by the energy of a high growth startup, which is a total buzz and very exciting. What do you see when you look around?
What do I see? Oh, that was quite cool to your interpretation. I just see, heaps of awesome people doing remarkable work, really. I see kind of joy and fun, but also real intent, and that's what I see.
You must be proud.
I think it's it's really, it's proud, but also I've got that typical founder thing where I'm also but wait, there's more, it kind of still feels like the start. Yeah.
Hurry up, we need to keep going.
Pressure and care balance, eh? Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about how do you see the world? Very broad question.
I've always looked at things through a bit of an optimistic lens, of kind of hope and opportunities. And it's definitely challenged and difficult at times, especially on the global stage when you see, what's happening, and it's just horrific. But and you try to center on what you can control, but it's still a reality. So I think that's kind of interesting as maybe I'm getting older or maybe more well-read or something, in how you kind of grapple those two worlds. But in the world the world in terms of the view that I see around me, based here in Aotearoa, so fortunate and lucky to be here. So I feel quite optimistic, with heaps of need to challenge and make changes, and spend more time in nature too. Yeah.
Seems to be a theme. Yeah. And how do you see yourself?
I think I always get reflected back to me that I've got a lot of energy, and that's kind of it's always who I've been, and I'm really accepting of that and kind of see that as something that I didn't realize was a bit of a strength of mine that is. And so I just kind of lean into that a lot more this year. And leaning into that also means letting go of the shadow sides of having a lot of hectic energy. But I'm chill as with that.
Tell me more about your the shadow sides of having hectic energy.
Well, I think I like when things are when there's heaps going on. That's probably when I operate at my best. And at times, if it's a bit too chill, I'm cool, what I got to go learn, what I got to do, I'm an active relaxer maybe. And the shadow sides of it is, maybe getting bored easily. And my attention can wander. But I've learnt kind of techniques of how to manage my time, or I manage my energy by how I kind of structure my day and things like that.
That's good. Yeah. Any tips for fellow frenetic energy people?
Yeah. For me, exercise has been massive. I knew that about me. I know my body needs to move, but that has been massive. Actually being really deliberate about that, and walking in every day, or going for a run as much as possible. And if I know I'm going to be in a board meeting for a day, I have to walk around beforehand. I just can't sit there and keep my attention unless I've kind of exerted myself a bit. And then I find that in the morning, like, overnight, no matter, like, I would have had ideas or thoughts or things I want to do, and I don't like coming in and going straight into a meeting. Like, it feels like that to me, like where I haven't had space to like get that stuff done and like switch in and tackle the things I wanted to straight away. So I like to spend at least the first hour of a day of just doing that. Like once I've walked in or whatever, had my cup of tea and I'm just like, brrr, and then I'm way more present for people for the day and I just feel way lighter. And that's a real massive change that I've made that just means that my days operate a lot better and I operate a lot better and people get, more out of me.
Was there a moment where someone kind of like came to you, like maybe it was like Leighton or one of your team and they're like, could you be a bit more present? Or like, how did you kind of come to that realization? Was it like a conversation or just like your own reflections?
It was actually way back when I worked at Kiwibank and I did this leadership development course. And they were like, Brooke, you need to figure out how to manage your energy. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And I didn't take it completely seriously at the time, but also kind of like sat heavy with me. And then over time, I've started to go, oh, I see what they mean, and I've probably at Sharesies more realised, how to make the most of that.
What does it mean to you to live a bountiful life?
I think there's like a fear I have is a lot of people go through life feeling like they need more, and they'll never have enough, and that's something I never strive for. Like I feel very lucky to be alive every day. Like I think that just lightens the load and you just naturally, kind of find the bounty in any moment. Like, I don't know, I'm one of those weirdos when I see two people at the airport and they're like hugging because they've just met each other. Like I'm just beaming with smiles for them, I'm just like, that's cool. Like there's so many micro moments in a day. It's, finding the joy in the little things.
Yeah. I love that. What advice do you have for your 25-year-old self?
Funny enough, I think I wrote an article. I was asked that question by NZ Herald and there was like 10 things I had. And gosh, who knows what they were because that was a few years ago. But what advice would I have for my 25-year-old self?
0 maybe?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, just starting.
Yeah, it's probably about to start Sharesies. It's like, I remember someone saying, whatever you're putting off, do it now. And I kind of like that as a way of, thinking about things at times. It's like, what am I putting off and why aren't I just doing it now? I would also say I would have liked to, hurry up and learn another language and music and surf and stuff. But, time will tell.
Do you have any tenets that you live by?
I mean, one that always comes to mind, if there's a will, there's a way, like if it feels like a tricky spot, it's like, find a way. I remember watching the movie Inside Out. I don't know if you've ever seen it. And like Joy being at the helm. And I was like, always keep that, I don't want sadness or anger or whatever that they perceive the parents to kind of have it as the helm of their emotion. I never realized how much I love learning. But I'm super curious and I think continuing to follow that. And one thing I really want to stop in terms of a rule I'm trying to put on myself a bit harsher is when I get home with my kids, put my phone away, and just be there with them and play. And then when I am using a device, trying to be being really intentional about it, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to make an action or trying to learn something, rather than kind of drift.
Like doom scrolling?
Yeah.
I like that. I actually go hiking without my phone now because obviously in the content world, could be capturing content.
Yeah.
My worst fear is content being my life. And so now I leave everything at home and then just go tackle the tussocks with the dog and partner, and it's been really cathartic, I think.
Yeah.
So obviously people would know your background, but if you were to sort of summarize your background to this point, what would you say?
Yeah, I grew up seeing different aspects of the world, or different ways of how money provides opportunities and creates other emotional hangs. And so I've been always intrigued on how to navigate that and help others navigate that. I really care about social entrepreneurship and business being a force for good. And that's probably what I'll be up to for years. Yeah.
When you talk about money, what in your view, what is the role of money in someone's life, or what is the...
Ultimately, it should enable opportunities, whether that, or help you live the life you want to live. And there's different ways of bringing that into your life, but ultimately there's some small habits that people can have that will make that more of a possibility in the years to come. And I remember my first finance lecture learning the time value of money equation, and that time is the most valuable aspect of money, no matter how much you start with. And that's, and just building it. And that's what I'm hoping that we're helping create generations of doing these days, is like having their money working for them and creating money off that money so that they can have the opportunities they want. Then ultimately it moves from like what I want to what we want in terms of the whānau, or in terms of the community around them, and then ultimately, society. So I feel like there's a lot more empowerment needed when it comes to money.
I remember, so my dad died when I was 18, and I remember being like, well, yeah, you taught me about business and all that stuff, but like, and you taught me about money, but you didn't teach me how to make money work for me. And I remember being like quite irritated, or like even angry that, you could acquire and earn money, but then what you do with it after that, beyond like spending and saving, there was like, I think I was like 25 or something, and there just wasn't that much information available. And then you put on top of that, like being a woman in the entrepreneurial circles, like no one sits you down and is like, hey, get a finance education. I mean, you studied at uni, but like personal finance was such a fascinating journey for me.
And like women, we control like 80% or so of the spending in the, like we have the power of the purse in a lot of ways. So I think it's really important that we're taught these things. And I don't think it's nothing, and more people, and everyone is too, but that's not something like that's our fault or our shame to wear. It's like the structural changes that are needed. And we're one key part of, small part of that, but hopefully.
And your biggest thing is $5 a week can change your...
Well, it can be however much, like it depends, but right when they start and how much, but it's just that habit, and building wealth over time is, with amounts you can afford, can really compound. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're not someone that chases like more.
Yeah.
So what has been enough? Like what is enough for you? Do you have like a vision of like enoughness?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think that like at a base level, it's kind of there, I've got 2 awesome children. Like I'm feeling challenged and I feel like I'm being able to spend my time in a way that is in line with my passion and purpose, and feel quite content in that regard. So that's cool. There's also like opportunities that I want to create for others later in life or be part of. And so that's part of, I guess, what drives me to continue to grow and develop. And ultimately like having fun, and enjoying those moments and having space to be able to have fun. It's quite cool. Yeah.
Were there any experience that you had in childhood or otherwise that helped shape your life?
I think like the most help in a lot of ways was just having such strong relationships with my grandparents. Like they were a big part of my childhood, and a real source of strength in what was right or wrong for me. And so like so fortunate to have, my pop only, come pick me up out of kindy early because he wanted to hang out, like there's just heaps of love there. And he'd read to me constantly, and I just love sitting on his lap and being read to my nana, who like she just knew how to like make things work. And I always felt like like so much kind of love and care from her too, and she was always there. And I think like those relationships were really foundation, but and I reflect a lot on like, what would they think right now,
Tell me about what you're doing with Sharesies, and I guess why you wake up every day with that like intense drive to have the impact that you do.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to do. So we're, there's this, a movement in terms of the way that people think about money or have access to money that we need to change and continue to. But also it's a long-term thing, so helping people build that confidence when it comes to money and investing and developing wealth, and then the motivation to stick with it, and that, no matter what the market's doing or what's happening in their lives. And so that's a real important aspect of what we do. We also have another part of Sharesies though that's outside of the wealth app, which is what we learn is we need to build really strong relationships with listed companies too and help them understand what their retail investors or shareholders need and want, and also make sure that the retail investors are getting the information that they should be getting from companies too. So we've built this portal called Sharesies Open where companies can collaborate and communicate closer with their shareholders, and I see just heaps more opportunity in that space too to bring that voice to the table. Yeah, I think, we want to create equal money opportunities. So there's a lot of other areas we can go into outside of what we've got with investing and saving and now KiwiSaver too. So yeah, there's heaps to do.
It's that chaotic energy again.
Yeah, it's right there. It's at my fingertips. Yeah.
And like the purpose question, I think, is one that unless you've found your purpose, a lot of people struggle with because they're like, oh, everyone's telling me to find my purpose. Like, what is that? You seem to have found that pretty on. Like, did you just like wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to do this thing and, that's going to be my mission in life? Or how did that happen for you?
Wow. I remember when I was at school, there was like, just follow your passion purpose. You're like, I'm just trying to figure out what are the options out there? I don't even know. And I reflect on this thing I wrote when I was 17. It's like things I want to achieve in my life. And I wrote, I don't know, a bunch of things on a A4 piece of paper. And it was really cool to reflect on that. I accidentally stumbled on it a few years ago and was like, oh, I've actually done most of that. That's so weird. So like there is an intent there, and I don't know if I knew what my purpose was. And it probably wasn't until Sharesies where like it felt like, oh, that's what drives me. Like it's all clicks together where I really care, like growing up seeing two different worlds where there's money and there's not, there's, like more love and, there's like, and how that changed people, opportunities that people got, and how, I only got to where I am today from scholarships, really, like that, so it's other people's generosity that's enabled these opportunities for me over time. And I think that's something that drives me is like, how do I help create more equal opportunities for people? How do people get more access to the opportunities that they deserve in their life?
How do we fix the wealth gap?
How do we fix the wealth gap?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, the wealth gap is ever present, and there's a bunch of things that need to happen to fix it. Some of them are structural, like from tax or government spend side. But in terms of what I think we can do is like one key part of is knowing that the gap's there and us being more educated in terms of how money works and how, that's a really important element. I think going, okay, cool, this is how it works. This is how, people having access to opportunities is a really important one to invest in, opportunities to get more equitable pay. So there's a whole system that needs to corral around that to make it possible. And tax is one way that can do it kind of quickly. But I think what we can do is make sure that people have opportunities that they're learning as they go, and that they're feeling like that there is that motivation and confidence to.
And if there's someone watching podcast and they're like, actually, what could I do as an individual, don't know what the circumstances would be, to help or do something, what would be one thing that they could do, like a person can do to help with the problem?
Over the summer, we've got this little podcast series about how to teach kids about money. And I feel like if you're a well-meaning adult with a child in your life, like I feel like there's something really powerful there that we could start with that next generation. Like in your friend group, there's a bunch of that, but that is the one that comes first to mind. It's like, just teaching how money works, and the podcast coming up can kind of help with that. But just talking about it a bit more is like, I think is quite important. And I think when people realize, oh, you've got the same problem I do, and even though you earn different or whatever, like it doesn't matter how much you earn or whatever, like, oh, you're facing that, oh, we could learn this together. And I hear about little groups of colleagues in workplaces that get together that look at their Sharesies together and talk about investing, or family members that sit down at the table and they talk about what's happening in the economy. Like that's so cool, because it's just starting to change the psyche and unlock those conversations that only the few have been having.
Why do you think money's been taboo? It's kind of like mental health was a bit of a taboo topic, and money's always been a taboo topic as well. Like, why is that?
There's different access points in terms of skills or jobs and, the ways that you can get in. I think sometimes it's just been we're not taught it at school. We're not taught how to manage money at school. We've all got our own stories based on what we've noticed from our parents or caregivers or our grandparents or like within our lives, or we feel like we've made the wrong moves. So I feel like there's so many psychological components to money that sometimes people need to confront, but also for people to start feeling like they've got control over it rather than it's controlling them. Yeah.
Your relationship with money matters as well. Like, I know I've done a bit of work with my relationship with money based on like my upbringing and some of the stuff that happened in my life. And I think it was really helpful when I started kind of going like, oh, okay, like there's some things in here that you might need to face up to in order to, I don't know, grow, use it wisely. Like I treated it as a scarce resource for a really long time rather than a resource to be like spent to create opportunity or to do things to learn.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I personally had to trick my money personality for sure, and still do. Like I think that I understand that kind of scarce resource part where I was like, I've got it and it's going to go. So like, I'd have a bit more of a spender mentality, I think, early on. And so I tricked myself of like, how can I feel the freedom I want to feel around, like, while also making sure that I'm creating opportunities for the future, or like, making sure I can keep living in the present too, or like, making ends meet. And so like I, separated out my accounts and have like money go into this account that I don't see often, that I know I can like, it's kind of like, can be more impulsive with. It's a small amount, but it adds up over time, and I look at it and I just feel guilt-free on whatever I do with that compared to other ones that's working hard for our family or, our house and things like that. So, and feeling really, and then I think spenders can get quite a lot of confidence from investing too, because it feels like, there's a momentum kind of happening there. So I definitely trick myself. Yeah. Yeah. And try to automate the tricking of myself.
What would you say is top of mind for you right now, maybe professionally and personally?
Top of mind for me at Sharesies is, we've got so many, like this has been a massive year of like delivery for us, which is awesome. Like there's been things that we've had in the pipeline, like KiwiSaver for 2 years. It's finally out now. Sharesies Open just came out the last few months. So I feel like my role now is to like really do honor to the work that the team have done and like share the information and make sure people know that those things are accessible and available through us, and making sure that Sharesies, the brand grows to show that like we offer those things too. So that's a big thing that's kind of on my mind, is making sure that, I'm helping the team make that kind of come to reality. And then personally, it's like the thing I'm kind of grappling with at the moment is like, trying to figure out how to be a good teacher, like with Elle in particular. Like she's so hungry to learn, and I'm so hungry to learn alongside her. Often, I need to figure out how can I teach her in a way that like really empowers her. I don't get my hands all in there, take over, like I'm trying to figure out how to be a good teacher. And that's something I've never really prided myself on. Like I can understand things, but I wouldn't say I'm always that good at like communicating it as instructions or, in a helpful way like that. So that's the thing that I'm figuring out personally.
Maybe just being you.
Yeah.
She's like you.
She's hectic. Yeah, I know. But then I'd like, cool, what worked for me when I was getting frustrated or felt something was taking too long? Like what are tricks that work for me? And just try to keep the learning being fun for her is quite important. Yeah.
What do you think gets in the way of people's ability to grow wealth?
Structural, where we just haven't had this information and haven't had access really until like to be able to with amounts we could afford. You'd have tens of thousands and face into all this jargon and, it felt quite opaque. And so I think it's a big part. Yeah, and just knowing that it doesn't matter how much, it's like the habit is some of the most important elements of growing wealth. Yeah.
And what about the fear aspect? Because a lot of people have a lot of fear around money and investing.
Yeah, there's a lot of overwhelm too, like, am I going to make the right decision? Or, it feels, and that's another reason why we wanted to make sure there's no minimum when it came to investing. So people felt like they could learn by doing, with amounts that they could afford rather than feeling like I have to make the perfect decision straight up, and that was quite an important aspect of it. But it's like, I use this analogy in my mind of like, you buy a red car and then all you see is red cars. And it's like, you get into investing, all you see is like, what's happening in the economy or what's happening with that company that I've invested in, or these funds, and like it kind of starts to it starts to open your eyes up in a lot of ways. And so, I appreciate there is fear and there's a lot of lack of confidence and knowledge in particular. But, that hasn't, all of us started as beginner at some stage,
I started with Sharesies, actually.
Yay, so did I.
And buying ETFs, I think, so exchange traded funds, and just like had it on what do you call it, like
invest?
Yeah,
nice.
And then built a little bit up, and I was like, okay. And then I'd go look at all your graphs.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, more, and then after ETFs, I was like, I'm kind of interested in like, I don't know, like battery technology or, fringe industries or utilities, like super boring, unsexy companies. What's going on there? Then went into like, direct company stuff. And so that was like a little journey, which was quite cool.
And who would have known when you started, right? But it's like you just, everyone starts as a beginner. Yeah. And that's okay.
The irony for us is we start on the startup investing side. And
I know. We're on the high risk side. And
I think my lawyer was like, I was like, so can you help me with investing? And he's like, no, I ain't giving you any advice on the startup side of life. That's way risky.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit more on your thoughts about how to make a bountiful business or community?
You're all about Bountifull. What do you see as like?
I think happy people coming to work that love their job, empowered to do their best work and actually enjoy their colleagues and get to have fun as well as, working hard.
Yeah, one thing I've learnt over the years creating Sharesies is like that balance of pressure and care, as someone, Tamati Allison recently put it to us actually. But I found it quite important. I remember when I started to be a CEO for Sharesies and I was getting advice from a fellow CEO and I was like, what is a job? Tell me about, from your view. They're like, it's a mix of encouraging and demanding. And I was like, okay. And, but that balance of pressure and care is quite important. And I think we've gone through periods at Sharesies where there's been not enough pressure and too much care. And then we've had moments where there's heaps of pressure, they might not have felt enough care, And it's like, and I think that balance is really important and what's right for a person at any time. And like people really want to, especially here, they really want to do their life's best work, and you really see that, you really see it come to life. They really want to make sure they're creating financial empowerment and they like run for that. And so making sure that they can do that in a way where they feel really in it together, that they know that, the team will celebrate around them, that they can, feel the wins along the way, that they feel really cared for, that they can care for themselves, they've got the flexibility they need, and that they actually are doing remarkable work and they can feel a lot of pride in that. And that's where I feel like we're really starting to hum again like we were in our early days, and it's quite exciting to be there again.
Pressure and care.
Yeah,
I think that's
balance of it. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
I love that. Leadership advice you have for other people building businesses?
I think one thing I reflect on that maybe we shouldn't have done, which I'm working through now, is like, if you're founding a company and you're growing it, you'll start getting a lot of you need to like give up Legos for sure. You need to make sure people have space to be able to create that role and grow it. But you ultimately have the vision and direction. And I think sometimes we stood back too far from that. We're like, we don't want to micromanage. They'd be like, are we even managing? On reflection, it's like, actually there's this vision and direction that those people, the people are bought into to help, and you still need to make sure that's really clear. And I think it's really important to keep that, in my mind, that founder magic too. Like what's the stuff that drives you that you really enjoy? And yes, you might need to find different areas where that happens, but I think like make sure that you never, that you're also stretching and growing, but also like not losing your magic by, trying to give it up to someone else. Cause that's probably not going to be the better outcome either. It's just kind of keep an eye on that, like make sure you're having a blast and learning new things and being challenged. And sometimes you have to do the grunty stuff, but make sure the other person is too, but don't when you bring people in, try not to just give up what your special sauce along the way. Yeah.
I think there's something that people don't necessarily talk about that much, which is like founder intuition. That it's a muscle that you just continue growing. Like you obviously have the intuition when you start the business, but that keeps growing. And so sometimes you're like, we're going to go in this direction and here's why. But when people challenge it, you're like, I just know, like I can't actually tell you the reasons why. The other thing I think is like clear is kind. That's something that I've started really liking, but then understanding that some people haven't necessarily learnt how to you're like, here's a business goals, go create your strategy. some people haven't realized that how to build a strategy off like your goals and then come back to you and be like, Brooke, this is unrealistic. You need to adjust your goals. You're like, oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sure.
I think a really good one for people who, having to deal with a founder maybe in that situation, is the best way to approach it is to provide options. Like, instead of like, that can't happen. Like you're gonna automatically, they're gonna find a way to make it happen. You know what I mean? So it's like actually like, okay, cool. If you want this, like here's some options, we can go about it. But this is what it's gonna take, And that is such a better conversation to have. And I remember, when I was at QBank back in the day, every week we had pricing committee where, I'd go up and have to say what we should price our term deposits and savings and transactional accounts at or whatever, and every week. And in that you'd always have options in your recommendation, because it's a way better debate to have in the room, because you want to make sure you're making the right calls, but also people can see, yep, this is why the rationale is for that recommendation. And I just think that's a great way of approaching those kind of dynamics for decision making.
I can imagine you in a meeting, if someone's like, no, we can't do that, you're being like, what? Like, that's not what I want to hear. Like, give me options.
My initial reaction is for sure.
That's not how we approach
these. It's really clear, yeah.
Give me options. Like, there's no no's. It's just like,
within what constraints does that change, Yeah.
Yeah, solutions focused people, not problems.
Yeah.
We have talked about this, but like, if there's a money conversation that people should be having, what is it?
What are your money habits? Like ask it, going around like, what are the habits you've got in your life that around money? Like that could be, it doesn't have to be about amounts and stuff, but that's really interesting for people to share and learn and actually realize you can have habits around money that can really propel.
Someone used to publish this blog where they were like, hey, we're a family of 4 and here's our money story. I was like, I used to find those so fascinating, just seeing what other people are doing and what they're learning.
Yeah, Happy Saver does that, and we actually interviewed her for that, how to teach kids about money too, about like how she's gone about that with her now 16-year-old, but over the years it's quite fascinating.
So I know that you're a runner and enjoy hiking. Do you think that we all need to get back to nature and embrace the child that lives within all of us?
I mean, I definitely have my inner child strong in me, and very much so. And look, I'm not going to have a blanket rule on anybody, but I do really enjoy getting out there and just being amongst nature when I can, whether it's the beach or just walking around even, out in a little hike. I think fresh air is so good for the soul. Movement is really good for mental health and also in clarity and and balancing a lot of the, I guess, your hormones and adrenalines. And I think it's, I love it personally. Yeah.
Biggest hope for New Zealand or society in general?
I mean, I ultimately hope people can live the lives that they want to live, and to do that, make sure they can get access to the opportunities and the healthcare and the education that, everyone deserves. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to answer this one, but I've got a question around what you think our financial future looks like.
For Aotearoa?
Yeah, maybe. In general.
Your general. It's interesting times. We've gone through, 10 years of things being quite, there's been a lot of capital in the startup world, a lot of growth, and now there's a little, it is cyclical, and there's a bit more of a crunch, and that's really hurting people who have got mortgages at the moment, and helping people who are saving at the moment. But then there's obviously inflation and costs of living that's impacted there at the moment too. So I think there is this real kind of change in the economic system that's happening at the moment, and that is impacting people in different ways, and that is cyclical. And the ways that we can better ourselves so that we can ride those waves over time is really important.
What has been a challenge that you've faced in life that you had to overcome?
I think, navigating becoming a parent while also running a startup, while also having other family obligations. I think on reflection, I was like, people are like, well, there's a lot. I was like, no, it's just me, and I'm like, well, maybe it was. I think I quite had a bit of brain fog going on, in the early parts of parenthood, and trying to, figure out how to balance it all. And I think the best lesson I learned for myself was, it just sounds bad, but lower my expectations or my standards of things, or on myself, so that I can enjoy it. And that has been massive, for me, and doing that in the right elements, where it's actually that doesn't matter.
Taking a longer view on what actually matters.
Yeah. Like, especially, I probably chilled out a bit more now, but like, if we were having people around, I'd just have to feel like I had to do all these things to make sure it was all good for them, And it's like, actually, they've got a spot, like we'll figure out the kai when they're there. Like I don't need to put that much energy into it. You know what I mean?
More there for you rather than the...
Yeah, and then it's actually better to be around, someone that's hosting that is a bit more relaxed, and that's just one, that's one little element that kind of came to mind to start with. But there's a few areas where it's had, kind of lowered my expectations.
Okay, quick fire questions and then we're nearly done. Do you have a vegetable garden?
So my alter ego does, but no, I don't. Yeah, I would love to have one, but no, not yet.
Is that a time thing?
Yeah, I think so. And like my ability to keep plants alive thing. Yeah. We've got a herb garden and the kids are very good at making sure that stays alive at the moment. So we're leveling up soon, hopefully, one day.
I think that's a great place to start, actually. And then do you love to cook?
I love speed. And I think that is kind of a bit of a issue. Like love a 20-minute cook, but every few months, when I feel a bit of space, then I just love getting lost in it. But I don't give that to myself often, and I'm kind of happy with that too. So that's a very long answer to say,
What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
Oh, I love nectarines. Yeah, so.
Just eating them? Or
yeah.
How do you like to have them?
Yeah, just eating them in salads, whatever. Yeah, delicious.
What's your favourite cocktail?
It's Frangelico on ice with like a cinnamon sugar rim. That, I forgot what it's called.
You might have to make that one.
Yeah.
Worst meal that your parents made you eat?
Spicy pumpkin soup. Well, I just did not like it as a kid. It was not that.
Biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
It's probably like in my childhood. Yeah.
What word describes your life?
I don't know, fun. Yeah.
It's a good word. And what are you most proud of?
What I'm helping create for Alan Louie, and then that I'm spending my time in a way that I think is the best that I can. Yeah.
It's worthy. That's what word comes to mind. What legacy do you aspire to leave behind?
I think, you there's that saying like, people don't remember what you do, they remember how you feel. And I think I do want people, I hope that I leave a feeling in people that like, she really cared.
Final piece of advice.
Yeah, whatever you're putting off, do it now.
Love that. Thank you, Brooke, for sharing your thoughts and experience with the Bountifull Podcast. I love thinking about the impact that you're having on people's life and even your own by democratising a subject that has a lot of emotion and is really close to people's hearts and their ability to actually live a bountiful life, whatever that means to them. For all of you listening or watching, I will put all of Brooke's information in the show notes and point to her social media. And if you've found today's episode inspiring, don't forget to follow us and subscribe for more engaging conversations. Our season is brimming with extraordinary people and delightful conversations that you won't want to miss. So thank you so much. See you next time. Thanks, Brooke.
Cool. Thanks for having me.